I buried my son 7 days ago. The flowers from his funeral were still wilting in my kitchen when I put on a navy dress and walked into my niece's wedding reception. I had promised myself I would keep my head down, stay for the meal, and leave quietly. But before the first toast was over, my sister stood up in front of 100 guests and announced that the college fund I had spent 19 years building for my son was now paying for her honeymoon. She smiled as if she had just shared good news. My mother, sitting beside her, nodded proudly and said, "He would have wanted it." Then my sister waved her phone, showing me a bank transfer receipt as proof. I looked at both of them and said, "Is that so?" They didn't know the account they touched was never meant for them, and taking it would be the worst mistake they had ever made. The September air was warm, but the heaviness in my chest made every step toward the reception hall feel heavier. The community center had been transformed for the wedding. White tablecloths, lavender centerpieces, twinkling fairy lights draped across the ceiling. The scent of roses mixed with champagne drifted through the open double doors. Guests moved between tables with glasses in hand, voices blending into a cheerful hum. I felt like I had stepped into someone else's world, one that didn't seem to have space for grief. I smoothed the fabric of my navy dress and forced my shoulders back. This was my niece Hannah's wedding day. She deserved her celebration, even if her mother and grandmother had never treated me like family. My son Noah would have wanted me to at least try to be there. He had always been the bridge between me and the rest of them. Now that bridge was gone. A week earlier, I had been standing in a cemetery, clutching a folded program with Noah's smiling face on the cover. He was 19 with brown hair that caught the sun and eyes that always saw more than most people realized. He was supposed to start his first semester at university this fall. He had already chosen his dorm room, picked his schedule, and joked about how much he would miss my cooking. Then a late-night call shattered every plan. A drunk driver ran a red light. My world stopped in that moment, and it had not started again. Noah's father died when he was only 8. From then on, it was just the two of us. Every extra dollar I made from overtime shifts went into his college fund. I told him it was for his future, but in truth, it was my promise to him that no matter how life turned out, he would always have a chance to follow his dreams. That account became my silent reassurance on the hardest days, evidence that I could give him something better. I never touched it, no matter how tight things got. Walking into that wedding felt wrong. The music was upbeat, the laughter loud, the champagne overflowing. I could see my sister Tessa across the room, glowing in her mauve bridesmaid dress, with her arm wrapped around her new husband James. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup flawless. Beside her, my mother Marilyn was dressed in a glittering silver gown that caught the light every time she moved. They were holding court, telling stories and sipping wine, completely absorbed in their own joy. I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall behind the buffet table. My makeup was subtle, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. I looked like someone who didn't belong in a room filled with toasts and dance floors. People glanced at me with the kind of polite sympathy that doesn't require conversation. They smiled, nodded, then turned away. I couldn't blame them. Grief makes people uncomfortable. It doesn't fit into small talk. I kept to the side, scanning the tables for my assigned seat. A few cousins stopped to say hello, asking gentle questions about how I was holding up, but the words felt automatic, like they were checking something off a list. No one mentioned Noah by name. I noticed how their eyes slid past me when Tessa walked by, how their tone shifted to something brighter, more animated. She had always been the favorite, the spontaneous one, the fun one, the one who got away with everything. It wasn't jealousy. I had made peace with our family dynamic years ago. What bothered me was how easily my mother and sister rewrote the rules when it benefited them. Tessa could forget birthdays, skip holidays, borrow money without paying it back, and Marilyn would still defend her. I could work double shifts, help with errands, and take care of Dad when he got sick, and it would barely earn me a nod. I found my seat at the far end of the hall near the exit. It was close enough to see the head table, but far enough that my absence during the dancing would not be noticed. I sat down, folded the napkin on my lap, and tried to focus on the details of the room. The sparkle of the glassware, the neat arrangement of silverware, the flicker of candlelight on each table. I was determined to get through the evening quietly. The sound of clinking glass pulled my attention back to the front of the room. Tessa stood with a wide smile tapping her champagne flute. "Everyone," she began, her voice ringing through the hall, "I just have to share something wonderful." I felt the shift in the room as heads turned toward her. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes sparkling as she glanced at James and then at my mother. I didn't know what she was about to say, but I knew from experience that whatever it was meant to put her in the center of attention. Before she even spoke the words, I felt a flicker of unease. My mind went to Noah's college fund without reason, as if some instinct was warning me. That account had been untouched for years. It was my most guarded asset, something I never discussed openly. Only immediate family knew it existed, and even then, I kept the details private. Still, something about the way Tessa's smile widened made my grip tighten on my fork. As the guests leaned forward, waiting for her next sentence, I could feel the moment shifting. My plan to quietly survive the night was about to be tested in a way I hadn't anticipated. Tessa's voice carried easily over the chatter in the room. "I just have to share something amazing," she said, smiling like she was about to announce a lottery win. "The college fund Rachel set up for Noah, it's now going to give me and James the honeymoon we deserve." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. The words landed one at a time, and each one hit like a stone. My hands froze around my fork, my back stiffened. She was standing there, beaming, while my son's name was used to justify funding her beach vacation. A ripple of murmurs moved through the tables. Some guests glanced at me, unsure whether to smile or look away. My chest tightened. Before I could form a response, my mother leaned forward, her voice carrying with that familiar edge of authority she had used my whole life. "Rachel, it's the right thing. Noah would have wanted you to use the money for something happy." I turned toward her. Marilyn's expression was smug, as though she was proud of herself for offering me this wisdom. Her hand rested on Tessa's arm in a show of unity. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice low but steady. Tessa lifted her phone and walked toward my table, holding the screen out like a prize. "The transfer went through this morning. See? Right here, straight into our account." On the screen was a bank app showing a completed transfer for a substantial amount of money. She leaned closer and added, "I figured you wouldn't mind. You're not going to need it now, and we're family." My stomach turned. I had not touched that account since the day I opened it. It wasn't a regular savings account. It was carefully structured, legally protected, and far more valuable than they could imagine. Seeing Tessa standing there, so certain she was entitled to it, ignited something sharp inside me. "You went into my account," I said, the words cutting through the air between us. Tessa shrugged as if it were nothing. "Mom had the details. She helped me sort it out." She gestured toward Marilyn, who didn't flinch. "I told her it would be better for everyone if the money was put to good use," Marilyn said calmly. "Noah would have wanted the people he loved to enjoy life." Loved. The words stung. Noah had been kind, but he wasn't here to defend himself. They were twisting his memory to justify their theft. I became aware of the people around us leaning in slightly, pretending not to listen but catching every word. I wanted to shout, to humiliate them the way they had just humiliated me, but something told me to stay still. This was not the moment to unleash everything. "That's quite an assumption," I said finally, pushing my chair back and standing up. My legs felt like steel. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." I walked toward the double doors, my heels clicking against the floor, my pulse pounding in my ears. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the laughter and music muffled behind me. I pulled my phone from my bag and called Daniel Kersey, my attorney. He answered on the second ring. "Rachel, I wasn't expecting to hear from you tonight." "I need to tell you something," I said, pacing along the edge of the parking lot. I explained exactly what had happened, word for word, from Tessa's announcement to the screenshot she had shoved in my face. Daniel was silent for a moment, then I heard him exhale. "They just made a very serious mistake," he said. "That account isn't just a college fund. It's part of the protected trust your father left you. That money is legally insulated, and touching it without your consent is theft and wire fraud." "I want them held accountable," I said. "Every penny returned, and I want it on record." "You'll have it," Daniel replied. "Do not confront them again tonight. I'll draft a formal notice first thing in the morning and contact the bank to freeze their accounts until the matter is resolved." His calm confidence steadied me. "Thank you," I said. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "They're about to learn there are consequences." I hung up and stood still for a moment, letting the air fill my lungs. Through the glass doors, I could see Tessa and Marilyn laughing with a group of guests, completely unaware that they had just crossed a line they could never step back from. I walked back inside not to speak to them, but to take my seat as if nothing had happened. I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them thinking they had gotten away with it, because when the truth hit, I wanted it to be impossible for them to pretend they didn't see it coming. I stayed through the rest of the dinner, even managed to clap during the toasts. My hands shook under the table, but no one noticed. I kept my eyes on my plate, my expression calm. Every smile I gave was measured. If they thought taking what was mine would come without a cost, they were about to find out how wrong they were. I sat through the rest of the evening with a calm expression, my mind already working ahead. Every toast, every burst of laughter from Tessa's table, every time Marilyn leaned over to whisper in someone's ear, it all fueled my resolve. They thought they had taken something from me that I could never get back. What they didn't realize was that by moving that money, they had stepped into a trap of their own making. When the music finally swelled for the first dance, I slipped out without saying goodbye. The night air felt cooler now, and with every step toward my car, I felt my focus sharpening. By the time I shut the door behind me at home, I was no longer just a grieving mother. I was a woman with a plan. I poured a glass of water and sat at my kitchen table with my phone. Daniel's contact was still at the top of my recent calls. I texted him, "Proceed first thing in the morning. Full action." His reply came almost instantly. "Understood. I'll have everything ready. Do not speak to them until I deliver the notice." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, not because I had found peace, but because I knew exactly what was coming. The next morning, Daniel called as soon as the bank opened. "I've frozen the trust account," he said. "I've also submitted a fraud report to their bank for the funds they moved. Their joint accounts will be restricted until the investigation is resolved. The notice of legal action will be delivered to both of them today." "What happens if they try to fight it?" I asked. "They won't get far," Daniel said. "This isn't just about the withdrawal. The trust was established under your father's estate with clear conditions. They violated both civil and criminal statutes. If they push back, it will go to court, and the evidence is airtight." By the time I hung up, I had already decided I wouldn't be waiting for them to come to me. I wanted them to see, hear, and feel the weight of what they had done. Around noon, I got in my car and drove to my mother's house. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people kept their lawns neat and waved to each other from driveways. My mother's car was in the driveway, and parked beside it was Tessa's. I walked up the path, my heels clicking against the concrete, and knocked firmly on the door. A moment later, Marilyn opened it, her expression shifting from surprise to irritation. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Tessa appeared behind her, looking flustered. In her hand was an envelope, Daniel's letter. Her cheeks were pale, and her eyes darted between me and the paper like she was deciding whether to defend herself or beg. "You're overreacting," Tessa said quickly. "We didn't know it was part of a trust. We thought it was just my son's college fund." I cut in, my voice steady but sharp. "You thought wrong." Marilyn stepped forward. "Rachel, this is family. You don't drag family through court over money." "This isn't about money," I said. "It's about respect. You both went behind my back, accessed something that wasn't yours, and used Noah's name to justify it. That's theft. And now, it's also fraud." Tessa's voice cracked. "We didn't mean for it to be like this. Can't we just fix it without lawyers?" "You already involved lawyers the moment you took that money," I said. "You took from a protected trust. That means it's no longer just my decision. It's in the hands of the law now." The silence between us was heavy. Marilyn's mouth tightened. She was used to being able to guilt me into giving in, but that power was gone. "You have until the end of the week to return the funds in full," I continued. "If you don't, the charges proceed, and you'll be explaining your choices to a judge." Tessa's shoulders slumped. "We don't have the money anymore," she admitted. Then you'd better find it, I said, turning toward the door, because I'm done protecting you from yourselves. As I walked back to my car, I could hear them starting to argue with each other inside. Their voices rose, blame already shifting back and forth. I didn't look back. This was the turning point, and for the first time in a long while, I was in control. 3 days later, I was in my kitchen making coffee when I saw a dark sedan pull into my driveway. I stepped to the window and watched Tessa and Marilyn get out, both looking like they hadn't slept. Tessa clutched a manila envelope in her hands. Marilyn's mouth was pressed into a thin line. I opened the door before they could knock. "You're here early," I said. Tessa held out the envelope. "We got the letter from Daniel," she began, her voice tight. "The bank accounts are frozen. We can't pay bills. We can't even get cash." "That was the point," I replied, stepping aside just enough for them to enter. They walked into the kitchen, the air between us heavy. Marilyn stood near the counter, arms crossed, while Tessa set the envelope on the table and slid it toward me. "We didn't know it was part of a trust," she said again, like repetition would change the facts. "We thought it was just the college money. We were wrong." "But you can fix this, Rachel. Just tell your lawyer to stop." I picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "What's in here?" Tessa shifted on her feet. "It's what's left of the money. We already booked the honeymoon and put down deposits, but we're giving back what we can." I set the envelope down, untouched. "You think giving back part of what you stole will make this disappear? The trust isn't just about the money, it's a legal entity. The second you touched it, you broke the law." Marilyn finally spoke, her tone sharp. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Families work things out without dragging each other into court. Do you really want to be the one who ruins your sister's wedding memories? Do you really think she didn't ruin her own wedding memories the moment she decided to raid her dead nephew's fund?" I asked, my voice steady. Tessa's eyes welled up. "I made a mistake. Please, Rachel. We'll pay you back in installments if we have to. Just don't let this go to court. James doesn't even know how bad it is yet. If this gets out, it'll destroy us." I took a slow breath. "You're worried about your reputation. I'm worried about my son's name being used to justify theft. There's a difference. You could have asked me for help. You could have talked to me like a sister. Instead, you went behind my back, pulled my mother into it, and took something sacred." Marilyn's eyes narrowed. "You've always held on to grudges. That's why people keep their distance from you. Let this go before you embarrass yourself." I stepped closer to her, meeting her gaze. "I'm not embarrassed. You should be. You've spent my entire life defending Tessa's selfishness, but this isn't a missed birthday card or a borrowed sweater. This is criminal, and you're standing here acting like it's a family misunderstanding." Tessa's voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" "Full repayment in writing within 5 business days," I said, "and a signed admission of what you did, so when people ask why I cut ties, I can show them the truth." She blinked at me, stunned. "You can't be serious." "I'm done being the sister you walk over," I said. "If you don't meet those terms, Daniel files the charges and you deal with the fallout, and I won't feel bad about it for a second." The silence that followed was long and tense. Finally, Tessa picked up the envelope and clutched it to her chest. "We'll talk to James. We'll figure something out." "You do that," I said, walking to the door and holding it open. "And remember, you set this in motion. I'm just making sure it ends the right way." They left without another word. I watched from the doorway as they climbed into the sedan, the weight of what was coming hanging over them like a storm. That night, Daniel called to confirm that the repayment agreement was drafted and ready for them to sign. "If they meet your terms, you can choose to close the matter quietly," he said. "If not, we go forward and it becomes public record." "They'll sign," I told him. "They're more afraid of losing face than anything else." I hung up and walked to Noah's framed photo on the mantel. For the first time since that wedding, I felt like I could look at his face without the taste of betrayal in my mouth. "They won't touch what's yours again," I said aloud, my voice steady and sure. 5 days later, Tessa and Marilyn returned, this time without the smugness they had carried at the wedding. They walked into my kitchen with the signed agreement and a cashier's check for the full repayment. Their expressions were stiff, their voices clipped. They did not apologize in words, but the way Tessa slid the envelope across the table without meeting my eyes said enough. I reviewed the agreement, making sure every clause was exactly as Daniel had written it: full repayment, acknowledgement of unauthorized withdrawal, and a promise of no further contact regarding the trust. Once I was satisfied, I signed my portion and handed it back to them. "You met the terms," I said, folding the check into my wallet. "This matter is closed." Tessa nodded once, still unable to look at me. Marilyn's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. They left without any attempt at small talk, their footsteps quick down the walkway. I closed the door behind them and locked it. The next week, I called Daniel to confirm the funds had cleared and the account was fully restored. "It's back where it belongs," he said, "untouched and secure. You did the right thing, Rachel." That night, I sat at my desk and opened the folder where I kept all of Noah's important documents: his birth certificate, school awards, and the college acceptance letter he had been so proud of. Beside them, I placed a copy of the signed agreement and the bank statement showing the funds back in the account. It was not about the money anymore. It was about keeping my promise to him. Over the next month, I took steps to make sure no one could ever access the trust without my explicit approval. New security protocols, additional signatures, and encrypted account access. It was exhausting, but it was worth every minute. I decided to use a portion of the trust's interest to create something lasting: the Noah Colton Scholarship. It would help underprivileged students pursue higher education, honoring the dreams my son never got to fulfill. The first announcement went out to local high schools, and the response was overwhelming. Teachers and students wrote letters expressing gratitude, and for the first time in months, I felt something lighter than grief. Word about the trust incident spread quietly in family circles. Tessa avoided me at gatherings. Marilyn stopped calling altogether. Some relatives reached out privately, saying they understood why I had taken action, though I knew a few still whispered that I had been too harsh. Their opinions didn't matter. I had drawn a line, and I was not stepping back over it. On a crisp autumn morning, I drove to the cemetery with a small frame in the passenger seat. Inside it was the official announcement of the scholarship, printed on heavy cream paper with Noah's name in bold at the top. The wind was cool, and the leaves rustled in the trees as I walked to his grave. I knelt and set the frame beside the headstone. "They will never touch what's yours again," I said quietly. "And now your name will open doors for others. You're still making a difference." I stayed there for a while, letting the peace of the place sink in. When I finally stood to leave, I felt steady in a way I hadn't since the night of the accident. Driving home, I realized something important. Strength isn't just about fighting battles. It's about choosing which ones matter and seeing them through, no matter who stands against you. This one had mattered, and I had won. If you were moved by this story, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts. I read every one of them, and if you want more powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next one.